Shocking but true. In the US, manufacturers can introduce new, safe food chemicals without even informing the FDA. That's not internet rumor. That's how GRAS works right now. We'll count down 12 additives other countries rejected, then trace the exact lever that keeps each one in US foods: aging approvals, industry-led science, and slow or missing reassessments. If you've wondered why dyes flagged for kids' behavior stay legal here, or why bread boosters other nations banned show up in our loaves, this will make it plain. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1. Potassium bromate. You expect bread to be flour, water, salt, but a dough improver still slips in: potassium bromate. Here's the truth. Bakers use it to stiffen weak dough, boost rise, and leave a whiter, tighter crumb. It's also flagged as a possible human carcinogen. Other countries said no. The US says it's fine if it converts during baking. That's the hinge. The rule assumes hot ovens erase the problem. But when baking runs fast or uneven, lab checks have found bromate residues. Think of it like a stain remover that's supposed to rinse clean until the wash cycle is rushed. No strict federal cap plus spotty oversight means you can get leftover bromate, especially in high-volume lines. Why is it still around? Legacy approvals and no hard clock to recheck the science. The model pushes responsibility to bakers, not regulators. Bottom line, when the law leans on assumptions, your toast carries the risk. Number 2. Brominated vegetable oil. That citrus soda glow? It can come from brominated vegetable oil, built to keep citrus flavor from floating to the top. Europe said no. So why did US soft drinks keep it for decades? Here's the truth. BVO carries bromine, which can build up in body fat and mess with nerves and thyroid function. Reports tied it to memory issues, skin problems, and nerve disorders. Yet brands pulled it mostly after public heat, not a clear federal ban, as labels and PR outpaced rulemaking. Regulators lagged while voluntary reformulation took the wheel. Petitions and state action pushed momentum, but the national rule arrived years after shoppers had already started avoiding it. Advocacy groups flagged the delay, calling out a slow safety review cycle. Bottom line, delay and deference kept BVO alive. GRAS thinking and slow reassessment let it ride until market pressure forced exits, one label at a time. Here's the kicker. Rules followed marketing, not the other way around. Number 3. Titanium dioxide. If a frosting or candy looks extra bright, titanium dioxide likely did the work. It makes colors pop by scattering light, so whites look opaque and coatings look smooth and shiny. The EU banned it over genotoxic concerns. Here's the truth. Studies flagged tiny TiO2 particles that can get into tissues and raise DNA damage questions even at low doses. Reviews also note it can build up over time. One animal study linked exposure to shifts in hormones and blood sugar control, which adds to the caution. So why is it still allowed here? EFSA used a precautionary review with strict, measurable criteria. The FDA leans on older data and a more qualitative call. And without a mandatory re-evaluation schedule, nothing moves. No conservative exposure model means the default stays yes. Bottom line, this is a method gap, not a slam dunk safety call. When safety math differs, your candy becomes a test case. Number 4. Propylparaben. You see paraben and think lotion. But propylparaben shows up in baked goods and shelf snacks to block mold. Banned in Europe and China for reproductive concerns, it's still GRAS here. Here's the truth. Lab studies show endocrine-disrupting signals, shifts in sex hormones and lower sperm counts in young rats, even at low doses. Kids matter more because their bodies grow fast, they eat more per pound, and small hits can add up over time like steady drops filling a cup. How does it stay on the market? GRAS lets companies self-certify with their own expert panels and literature reviews. Since 2016, even telling the FDA is optional, so files can stay private while products stay on shelves. Bottom line, private GRAS calls plus no clock to recheck old science keep propylparaben in play. California's ban kicks in 2027, signaling where this is headed. When states lead, federal rules follow, slowly. Number 5. BHA. BHA keeps oils from turning stale, but it also lands on cancer watch lists. Europe cuts it from foods while the US allows set uses. So why does it stay in your snacks? Here's the truth. Animal studies linked BHA to stomach tumors and flagged stress on the liver, kidneys, and thyroid. It also acts like an endocrine disruptor, which can throw off hormone signals. US approval rests on lifetime average exposure models, assuming small daily intakes, even when real diets swing. That math hides peaks. Kids eat more per pound and often reach for cereal, instant sides, and shelf snacks where BHA shows up. Heavy snackers stack doses across a day, like small drips filling a bucket until it spills. Bottom line, modeling keeps BHA alive. FDA exposure math leans on averages and older intake data, not today's peaks and vulnerable groups. The math you never see decides what's in your pantry. Number 6. BHT. BHT rides alongside BHA in cereals and chips to slow rancid oils. You see it on labels as an antioxidant. Simple word, messy story. Here's the truth. Europe forces tighter limits and warnings, while US shelves keep rolling under GRAS. Committees in Europe flagged risks to liver, kidneys, and thyroid, and lab work linked BHT to stomach tumors. IARC lists it as a possible human carcinogen. Yet trade groups lean on 1970s-era approvals and selective reviews that downplay newer data. Industry-funded evaluations fill the record, and public comment windows drag out updates like a line at the DMV. With no mandatory reevaluation clock, the file stays open, but nothing moves. The FDA's qualitative approach lets expert opinion outweigh stricter scoring systems used abroad. Bottom line, procedural inertia plus lobbying keeps BHT in your bowl. If you want out, pick products that use mixed tocopherols or rosemary extract instead. When the process slows, your cereal doesn't. Number 7. Red dye number 3. You couldn't put red dye number 3 on your lips for years, yet it still colored candy and snack cakes kids eat. That split isn't an accident. Here's the truth. The FDA banned it in cosmetics after cancer signals in animal studies, then left food uses standing while petitions piled up. That gap lingered for decades as products aimed at children kept using it. Synthetic dyes, including Red 3, have also been linked with hyperactivity and other behavior shifts in kids, which adds risk for families who see it in everyday treats. Pressure didn't come from Washington first. State bans, led by California, set deadlines and made national brands rethink recipes. Advocacy groups flagged the contradictions and pushed for removal. In 2025, the FDA finally declared Red 3 unsafe in food and set a phase-out clock. Bottom line, jurisdictional silos plus slow federal action. When policy splits, kids end up the test group. Number 8, red dye. Number 40. Red 40 is everywhere. Sports drinks, fruit snacks, bakery glaze. You see it in bold reds and pinks that sell sweetness to kids. It's a synthetic azo dye built to grab your eyes. So why does Europe warn and the US stays quiet? EFSA flagged behavior risks in children and requires labels that alert parents. That warning alone changes buying, like a speed bump that makes drivers slow down. US reviews weigh mixed studies and lean on average exposure, which can blur effects in sensitive kids. Research summaries link synthetic dyes, including Red 40, to hyperactivity and other behavior shifts in some children. California's scientists said current safe levels can miss those impacts. Labels would help parents steer clear fast. Here's the kicker. Policy hinges on the threshold for action. Europe acts on credible concern. The US waits for near certainty. Bottom line, without precaution, warnings don't show up. Credible concern is not enough under current rules. Number 9, Yellow 5. Yellow 5 shows up in cereals, sports drinks, and sherbet, foods your kid sees every day. It makes color pop. It also brings questions you don't see on the label. Here's the truth. Research on tartrazine links it to behavior and attention changes in some children. Parents and clinicians use elimination diets, hold the dye, track the change, then reintroduce to spot a trigger. Reviews in 2021 and 2022 said current safety levels likely miss these risks. Allergic reactions also show up for a subset of kids. That's not fringe. That's a real pattern. So why does approval stand? The FDA okayed yellow 5 decades ago and never set a reassessment clock. New pediatric studies don't auto-trigger a review. The model treats safe as the default until proof stacks high. Bottom line, no timetable, no update. If you want to cut risk, choose dye-free store brands and clear drinks. That's how a lunchbox dye survives year after year. Number 10. Yellow 6. Yellow 6 gives that deep orange pop in snacks and sauces. It's an azo dye that helps foods look richer than they are. Other countries require label warnings or tighter limits. The US still waves it through under an acceptable daily intake. Here's the truth. Azo dyes can break down into aromatic amines. Some are known carcinogens. Yellow 6 can also carry impurities from synthesis. That risk grows when kids eat several dyed foods in one day, because intake stacks fast, like receipts piling up on a counter. FDA reviews often score one dye at a time and lean on average intake. That skips the real-world mix: sports drink at lunch, bright chips after school, dessert glaze at night. Reviews abroad call out behavior concerns and flag kids as a vulnerable group. Bottom line at the lever is siloed risk. Without cumulative rules, each dye looks small compared to your total. Add it up and your day glows more than any label admits. Number 11. Azotocarbonamide. The yoga mat chemical nickname isn't hype. Azotocarbonamide foams plastics and also tightens dough so buns bake taller and wider. So why does it linger here when other countries restrict it? Here's the truth. During baking, ADA breaks down into byproducts, including semicarbazide and urethane. Regulators note urethane is a carcinogen. That breakdown is the red flag that drove bans abroad and limits in cautious markets. US policy leans on processing assumptions. The FDA permits ADA at small amounts in dough and expects heat to convert it, while brands can voluntarily reformulate when shoppers push back. That keeps federal action minimal and shifts proof to the factory floor. Bottom line, this is a tolerance for processed leftovers and a belief that ovens fix problems. That's a policy choice, not proof of safety. If you want out, choose breads labeled no dough conditioners. Trusting the oven is not the same as testing the bread. Number 12. Sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate sounds routine until it meets vitamin C and, with heat and light, can form benzene. That's a known human carcinogen. Your risk goes up when a drink sits warm or under bright shelves because those conditions speed the reaction. Europe tightened limits and monitors for benzene. The US tells companies to test themselves and keep records. Here's the truth. Benzo80 plus ascorbic acid plus time, heat, and light can unlock benzene like a weak latch on a door. Past product corrections and recalls proved what happens when controls slip. Guidance here leans on self-monitoring, stability tests, and voluntary recipe changes. No strict bans. That means you trust a factory's process more than a hard rule. If you want a quick fix, avoid drinks that list both sodium benzoate and ascorbic acid, especially in clear bottles. Bottom line, post-market trust is the lever. The system banks on factories catching problems before you do. That wraps our 12, but the pattern is the point. Here's the truth. These 12 aren't outliers. They expose a system that treats chemicals as safe until the harm is too obvious to ignore. The default is yes, and the burden lands on you. Change is on the table. Lawmakers floated plans to recheck risky additives and shine light on GRAS decisions. That signals momentum, even in a system shaped by industry pushback. Tell your representatives you want mandatory reassessment, independent GRAS reviews, and cumulative risk rules. Subscribe now and I'll show you what to avoid and what's actually safe. Your label won't change until the rules do. Start with your cart, then change the code.